Mic check 1, 2. This is the Next Majority podcast tuning in today to talk to you guys about red versus blue, the histories of the two parties in America, and how they have changed over time. So we ask, are red and blue even real anymore? In the past, these two political narratives defined our nation, but through polarization and nuanced values, these two perspectives have shifted. In this episode of the Next Majority podcast, we will be discussing how the historic values of Republican and Democratic parties have shifted and how they've almost become labels to lost causes. First, let's talk about the brief histories of red and blue as well as the histories of the two parties. So the terms red and blue were coined during the year 2000 by mainstream media during election times, according to the Smithsonian Magazine. As we know today, red represents the Republican Party or GOP, while blue represents the Democratic Party. The origins of the two parties were first started by the founding fathers Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who created the Democratic Republican Party or the Jeffersonian Republicans. This party was founded in 1792 to oppose the Federalist Party, and they favored ideas such as decentralized government with limited executive power and stronger state rights. Don't let these ideas fool you, however, since ironically, this party actually founded what led to the modern Democratic Party. However, the unified party ended up fracturing in the 1830s. So why did the Democrat-Republicans fracture in the 1830s? Simple. The Democratic-Republican Party could not agree on what America should look like. One side feared federal power and suppression of rights. The other feared mob rule and anarchy. And when Andrew Jackson stormed in, he favored strong executive power, opposed the federal bank even though he's on the $20 bill, and supported state rights, mainly for slavery. Therefore, the original Democratic Party was formed by Andrew Jackson, who, as a fun fact, according to the National Archives, was called a jackass by his political opponents, starting as the basis for the symbol of the Democratic Party's donkey, as later popularized by Thomas Nast in the 1870s. Comparatively, the red side of politics, or the Republican Party, traces its roots to the 1850s, where anti-slavery leaders joined forces to expose extension of slavery to Kansas and Nebraska. At its first presidential convention, they appointed John C. Fremont, who didn't have much success in his presidential bid, but brought awareness to the Republican Party. In its first 4 years of existence, the Republican Party had rapidly become the main opposition to the Democratic Party, replacing the previous Whig Party, who had similar values. In the 1860s, with the country split over the slavery issue, the Republicans, who opposed slavery, decided to have Abraham Lincoln as their candidate. As we know, he was elected, and his presidency was largely defined by the Civil War, an event that has shaped American politics heavily. To summarize, the original Democratic Party supported limited federal government, limited suffrage, states' rights, and populist appeals to the common man. The original Republican Party stood for abolition, strong federal authority, investment in national development, and social reform rooted in moral values. But if you're thinking, that sounds completely the opposite of what the parties stand for now, you are correct. The transformation was long, layered, and driven by shifting coalitions and crisis. To start, the first major reform that happened was actually to the Democratic Party during Kennedy era in the 1960s. John F. Kennedy's presidency helped move Democrats away from their segregationist legacy and towards civil rights, inclusion, and federal intervention for equality. This movement completely flipped the democratic values that were lasting for decades. In contrast, at the same time, many Southern voters felt betrayed by their party's push for integration and racial equality. The Republican Party saw an opening. Through what became known as the Southern Strategy, GOP leaders like Barry Goldwater and Richard Nixon used code language terms like states' rights and law and order to appeal to voters who opposed civil rights without explicitly talking about race. It worked, and the South slowly flipped from blue to red, not because of economics or foreign policy, but because of race and identity. The Southern Strategy turned the GOP into the dominant party in the South and redefined American politics for decades and decades to come. Next was the Reagan era. In the 1980s, a turning point for the Republican Party. During his presidency, Reagan preached a plan called the Reaganomics. The 4 pillars of his plan were significant tax cuts, less government spending, free market capitalism, and tightening the money supply to reduce inflation. But Reagan's impact was not just economic. He formed a powerful coalition between fiscal conservatives, anti-communists, and the religious right. Social conservatives became core to the GOP, helping push opposition to abortion and family values into mainstream Republican platforms. By the end of the decade, Reagan had reshaped the party into what we know now and recognize as modern conservatism, pro-business, anti-regulation, and socially traditional as well as family valuing. The Republican Party of Lincoln had become the Republican Party of Reagan. After Reagan, the next major shift came from within the Democratic Party. In 2015, Senator Bernie Sanders entered the national spotlight with a presidential campaign that elevated progressive issues into the mainstream. Running on proposals like Medicare for all, free public college, climate action, and higher taxes on the wealthy, Bernie energized a new base of voters, particularly young people and working-class Americans. Though he did not win any nominations in 2016 or 2020, his impact was significant. He helped shift the Democratic Party's conversation towards economic inequality, corporate influence, and social justice. Ideas that were once considered fringe became central talking points in primary debates and policy platforms. Around the same time, the Republican Party experienced its own major transformation through the rise of Donald Trump. Trump's 2016, 2020, and 2024 campaigns broke from traditional conservative orthodoxy by focusing on both limited government and executive power, economic nationalism such as tariffs, and cultural identity. He appealed to voters who felt overlooked by global trade, shifting demographics, and political elites in both parties. His positions on immigration, foreign policy, and trade diverged from past Republican norms, while his communication style, direct and confrontational, became a defining feature of his political brand. So far, Trump's policies have been quite extreme, especially with his aggressive tariffs and ICE raids, weakening trust in the Republican and conservative nature. As the future comes, we will see how the future Republican Party shifts and how the other parties shift as well. To conclude, as time passes, red and blue shifts. We must be ready for these shifts and realize our values should not stick to a certain party, since parties always change. That is it for today's episode. Make sure you like this video and subscribe for more content. The next majority, zooming out.